Our story, the one that defines us, spins a tale of chapters that reveal the origin of our why. Join me in exploring the narratives of changemakers who rise to the moment more often than not, and who are defined not by their achievements, but by the storylines they believe in. Join me, Dr. Rod Berger, as I integrate my new book about storytelling into a conversation that meets the moment. This is The Narrative Edge, a podcast under the banner of Headroom with Dr. Rod Berger, presented by our friends at Rig Productions. And now, onto our show. Well, this is an absolute treat for me. So again, I don't know, maybe this has just been in 2026, but I'm going to interview the people that interest me, that I have become friends with, that I think very highly of, that have been very thoughtful and giving of their time, their expertise, their perspective on storytelling within their domain, their experiences, and where they live around the world. And many of you know that I am global in nature, and I take great pride in that. And so I'm going to spend time, this will be our second interview, but Natasha Weber, she is known as Astrotash in Australia. What an incredible person. I think, Natasha, it has been, I don't even want to guess how many years it's been since when we first met. Was it pre-pandemic? It might have been. No.
I believe it was pre-pandemic.
Was it really?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
It might have been pre-pandemic. Well, let me give a little bit of background on Natasha. So she's known as Astrotash, an award-winning astrologer with over 20 years of experience, known for making astrology relatable. I can attest to that. Empowering and accessible. She's a resident astrologer for Channel 7's The Morning Show and horoscope columnist for Marie Claire Australia. As the first astrologer to deliver horoscopes on primetime news, Natasha made world history on 7 News, revolutionizing how astrology is presented in mainstream media. Her work reaches millions through her widely read columns, high-profile media appearances, and best-selling book, Your Celestial Compass, Astrology for Self-Discovery and Empowerment, published by Penguin Random House. So nice to reconnect with you. And thank goodness, Natasha, for the power of Instagram and messages, because you've been so kind over the years as I've floated different things out of the blue to you for just a perspective or thoughts. And I reached out, the other week because I just thought, I'm having all these conversations with people, and I'm very blessed to have them with people around the world because it really helps me with perspective, or at least I'd like to think it does. And there's so much, the word that comes to my mind is angst right now, and a feeling of, I feel like as humans, we kind of want to have something that we can lean into. We know where we are, or like we're rooted. There's predictability in our lives, and yet it feels like, the earth is sort of tilted on its axis, and we don't have that same kind of control. And I just thought, what? It would be really great. It's time. It's overdue to connect with you, see how you're doing, and try to understand sort of the world that we're in now from a different perspective, because I'm finding more and more people are leaning into astrology and trying to understand things that are beyond potentially our comprehension here on physical Earth. So that is a very long preamble to say, how are you doing? And are you feeling this strain of 2026 like so many of us are?
Oh, thank you for such a beautiful introduction, Rod. In response to your question, look, yes, I am. I think that even though I'm an astrologer and I have the privilege of being able to see the world through an astrological lens, which, as you mentioned before, it does help us to put a framework around our experiences, and it helps with understanding what we're going through and also the timing around what we're going through as well. So that's something that I'm very grateful for. But that said, it doesn't make me immune to the energies. And certainly being a Gemini, and with Uranus having just entered Gemini for the first time in 84 years.
I wanted to ask you about that. I saw your post about this was since the 40s?
Yes. Well, I should also just say it did dip into Gemini last year briefly from July through until November. So we did get a little preview, and this often happens with our big astrological transits with the outer planets. They do retrograde backwards and forwards a little bit, particularly in the beginning and towards the end of their cycles. So we do get somewhat of a preview. So a lot of what I might talk about, people might think, well, yes, I've already seen that happening, or yes, yes, I'm feeling that energy or those themes building either out in the world or in their own life. So yes, I am feeling it. And I just wanted to address what you were saying about our last meeting. That was a pivotal time for me, but I think for you, you were really going through a major crossroad in your life. So I believe in the serendipity of astrology, and that often astrology comes into the lives of people who need that bit of guidance or that additional understanding. And so it was my privilege to read your chart for you and give you some guidelines around all of the massive and exciting changes that were happening in your own life at the time.
Yeah, and I meant that when I said that. Like, I know for you've just always been so gracious with your time and your perspective, because I would think that I know I'm not alone in this. That the danger in being you is that when people understand your background and your work, it's like you meet a doctor at a party, and and all of a sudden everybody wants to go and talk to the doctor about the ailment, right?
Right.
Can you tell me what I should be doing, right? But
Yeah.
I'd be curious, as you're balancing between the energy that you're feeling, just like everybody else, right? You just may have a different perspective and sort of a lens with which to look through that I wouldn't have. I'll speak for myself, right? To understand it at that depth and level. I'd be curious to understand, like, how do you balance that for yourself to understand the weight of what you know and what you can decipher with the energy sort of at play, not only for you and your family and your friends and your community, but also for those people around the world that are seeking that connection, that, finding astrology when they need to have something that gives them a glimmer of reflection. And sometimes I think it's about reflection. It's almost like reflecting that, yes, I exist in some weird, very ethereal way, and my feelings are authenticated, my experience is authenticated, and astrology can provide, in some very loose, broad sense, that confirmation that what I'm feeling is actually happening. This is not just within the sort of the walls of my own mind. And I'm curious as to how you balance that out.
Yes. Well, firstly, I love when people approach me at a party and want to talk astrology. I am probably astrology obsessed, you could say, even after all these years, over 25 years of studying astrology. I do not tire of talking about it, and which is, such a blessing, actually, because I do believe that when we get to follow our passion in life, that is the number one goal. That is such an enormous privilege, isn't it? So I've got a lot of fire in my chart. Even though I'm a Gemini, I have a lot of mostly fire, actually, with my moon sign and so on. So that fire is passion and innovation. And yes, I never tire of that, and it's a privilege to speak to someone about their own chart and about what they might be going through, and that requires a certain amount of openness and trust from the person that I'm reading for, or even just speaking to about their astrology. So, I don't take that lightly. And I genuinely believe that astrology is a wonderful tool to help guide us through our lives. How I manage that in my own life, I have to say that I do sometimes question whether or not it is a good time to look at the charts of my family members. And in fact, I did look at one of my family members' charts last night because I understood that this person was going through a very, very difficult phase. And to be honest with you, I could see that phase coming to an end, but not for some years away. And I understood there'd be a lot of personal growth, and alongside personal growth is often a lot of transformation and pain, difficulty, challenge. I believe that that's how human beings develop into our best selves. It's through our challenges. It's not necessarily through our triumphs and the good times. They're like the cherry on top. They're the fleeting moments that we get to enjoy, but really we grow into our best version of ourselves through our most painful challenges and difficulties. So I could see that in this person's chart, and I think part of me was always fearful of looking. And that in itself is, being an astrologer is a blessing and a curse, because it gives you that ability But it also helps you to understand and to perhaps help that person with a remedy. And I would never offer anyone a reading of difficult circumstances without some type of remedy. And that is always available in the astrology, because every planet and every sign has a light and a shadow side, a positive and a negative, if you will. And so where there is a challenge according to a particular planet or planetary alignment at the time in someone's life, there is always a way to use that energy in a positive way. And when we're doing that, it's almost like we're using that energy up so that it cannot turn inward in a negative way. And we still may have some of the challenges, of course, associated with that transit, but we're working with the energies wisely. And I think that's where an astrologer comes in. That is our job. It is not just to deliver the news, it is to offer a pathway through that in the wisest way. So, yes.
Help me understand. I'd be so curious, and maybe this is I don't know if it's coming from a place of ignorance on my part, but I'm wondering about you just in the vulnerabilities as a human in this manner. Have you had moments in time when you have been very curious about your own chart and you've looked at it and thought, not like I want to prove it wrong, or I want to either change the course potentially? Like, do you have moments that we might describe as weakness only because it feels like there's a point of desperation in that moment? I'd be so curious as to how you handle those, because I think I would be inclined to, as a type A, sort of charge forward and think, okay, I'd rather know than not. And what can I do actively to make some impact or change the trajectory? Is that a normal thing that I'm bringing up here, or is that an internal conflict that you experience?
Look, absolutely, absolutely, it causes internal conflict when I see a transit coming up that is challenging, and I certainly have that. For example, and all Geminis, I speak to you out there as a Gemini with Uranus in your sign, and what that means is that Uranus is currently traveling through Gemini in the skies at the moment. And it will do until 2033. So it's a long transit. That can create sudden change, and it will trigger the sun sign. So I'm just going backwards a little bit to describe how an astrologer would interpret this transit. So if a planet is in your sign, it essentially means that it is going to trigger at some point your sun sign. For other people, they might have a Gemini moon, and then that planet will be triggering that moon sign at some point. And when I say at some point, I'm referring to the degree. So astrology is actually highly mathematical. Everything, the planetary movements are all measured in degrees, minutes, and seconds. And they are in the sign according to that calculation. So, for example, I have my sun sign in Gemini at 17 degrees. I won't even go into the minutes here. And Uranus will hit that point in Gemini. It's at 0 degrees now because it's just entered, but it will hit 17 degrees in about 4 years' time. So I know that in 4 years, I will have this Uranus activation to my sun sign. And this can bring about sudden change. Uranus can be very quick to change things. It can feel like the rug has been pulled from under our feet. Then again, as I said, positive and negatives, that can be exciting. It can be really exciting, but it can also frazzle the nerves. Uranus rules the nervous system. It actually rules the electrical impulses that fire between the nerves, and Gemini rules the nerves also. So I know I'm going to have to take a lot of care of my health and try and stay calm. I know a remedy for that would be something like breath work, because Gemini is an air sign. It rules the lungs. So, this is where we can get into the nitty-gritty of what the signs and the planets mean and how we can use those transits well. So that's just one example. I have been known on another point, I have been known to alter my chart Because we're not just talking about natal charts, not just the birth chart. We're also talking about the transits activating our chart, what's happening at the moment. This is where we get the forecasting. But there are mathematical formulas that we can apply to our own charts that show us a different perspective. So, for example, there's the solar return chart, and this is a chart that an astrologer will calculate for the year ahead. It shows the themes and the transits of the year ahead from birthday to birthday, from when the sun returns to its exact degree and position that it was in when you were born. And that lasts for 12 months. Now, in that solar return chart, the rising sign is extremely important. The rising sign is the easternmost point on the horizon at your exact time of birth. This is why you need to know your time of birth to understand your rising sign. And in a solar return chart, if we change our location on our solar return on our birthday, this can affect the entire chart. And so there was a time when I had a degree in a sign that I did not like. For that year. It was a degree of increased vulnerability, particularly with health. And I thought, I'm going to travel. So I actually went to Japan, and you can calculate the chart, obviously, for the new location. And I put all of my great planets into the 9th house, which is the house that rules publishing. And that is the year that I published my book. So it was very supportive for that energy.
Wait, okay. So okay, so you didn't sort of like the results you didn't like what the chart was saying. And
Yes.
and because of your expertise, you said, well, let me go to another location, and that will, I mean, it's almost like it's like you're moving the deck chairs, but that saying really means that you really haven't made any substantial change. So by doing that, though, that aligned in this house of like the written word or the spoken word.
Yes, it's literally publishing. It's also the house of knowledge and learning. And boy, was I learning about just different areas of life and technology, which I'm a very bad Gemini when it comes to technology. Technology and I are not friends, despite being an air sign. But anyway, yes. So I did. I tweaked it. Of course. You can't alter the transits. You can't change what's happening in the sky and how that activates your own natal chart, which is like your blueprint. But in this particular case, with this chart for the year ahead, for the solar return, I was able to manipulate it somewhat.
Had you ever done that before? Or have you ever had that experience where you're able to manipulate it at such a level where you felt a tangible difference?
You know what? I will also say in manipulating it, I think I was able to sidestep the most severe effects that I was trying to avoid. But the natal blueprint still exists. And so I did still have some a focus on health. But, perhaps it was enough to keep me out of the thick of things, if you like.
So it's so fascinating, Natasha, because I find it fascinating as it's like I'm processing what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because it's this juxtaposition of not knowing or trying to understand our role in the vast universe.
Yeah.
And at the same time, understanding it at such a level that we, meaning you, have this this awareness that you might be able to sidestep a bit. Maybe it's not a head-on collision with whatever that chart is sort of laying out there, right? It's an indirect sort of hit in that regard that maybe you can manage a little bit more adeptly, and it's not going to impact the rest of your, or sort of the comprehensive nature of your daily life, and also impact in a positive way what you're sort of allowing in from that publishing component. And then you realized and saw, it's just fascinating to think that, I don't know why that sticks with me, and that'll probably stick with me even after our discussion today. It's just, it's so vast, yet it can be sort of it's like you're able to, it's like clay. You're able to sort of take it and work with it and say, okay, I understand what I have to. It's just fascinating. And I'm doing a terrible job of understanding it and communicating it, but it just feels like almost like polar opposites in that way. You're occupying a space that many of us, if not the majority of us, struggle to comprehend, right? The nuance, the math, the precision.
Yes.
And when you do, you can actually say, wow, just in the change in longitude and latitude can have an impact, even if just slightly, to the way in which we experience that which is laid before us.
Yes. And Rod, one of my favorite sayings is as above, so below. And I think that perfectly encapsulates, doesn't it? Isn't it fantastic? Because we are a reflection of what is happening in the heavens, in our solar system. But I love this because it also illustrates that the planets don't make us do things. I think that they are setting up the cosmic climate or the astrological weather. And then I like to use the analogy that it's up to us whether or not we take an umbrella outside. I mean, to a certain degree, I manipulated it with my astrological knowledge. That was my chart there. But in another sense, and I think this is what you're alluding to as well, there is a degree of surrender to, what the planetary alignments are bringing into our world and into our experience. And we can manipulate it somewhat, but on the other hand, we do need to understand and surrender to what is happening. And this is where astrology is so beautiful, because it can help us to just let go in that understanding and in that awareness. That said, this is a grey, complex area we're talking about, and free will is also at play. I don't believe astrology is the be-all and end-all. As I mentioned before, it doesn't force our actions or our decisions or the outcome necessarily. It gives us the climate, the environment, and there is a degree of free will where we get to have a say in how we use that energy. It doesn't change the energy, but we do get a say in how we direct it.
See, that makes so much sense to me when you talked about astrological weather. So, for whatever reason, that allows me to think, now I understand what you're saying. Like, if I'm in a part of the world that is sort of preparing for the rainy season, well, if I'm going to stay there, I'm going to get wet.
Yeah.
See, I'm going to whittle this down for myself here. But if in the same point in time, I say, well, I don't do well in that environment and I'm going to go somewhere else. I've sidestepped it, right? And that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm so curious, Natasha. Now you can correct me, but my recollection is that one of the times we chatted, you'd made comment to me. I don't know what we were talking about. I was probably asking you a very big question or something around just the world dynamics and geopolitics and things like that. And I thought in my notes it was something like spring of 26 was going to be sort of a heavy year or a heavy point in our shared charts, if you will, universe. And boy, we find ourselves in the spring of 26. And, it's for someone who loves sort of the globalness of culture and history. I mean, we are in a spot I would define based on what I believe you had said to me, that we're there. We've landed in that environment that you told me a couple of years ago.
Yes. Well, we are in a massive transition for the world, for society. And the way that I work with I'm really uncomfortable with the word predictions, to be honest, because of what we just discussed about having free will. But if I can explain that, how I work with astrology a little bit, is that I look at the cycles in the past, because everything in life is cycles. The planets move in their cycles, and in understanding the cycles, we can get an idea of what the astrological weather is going to forecast for us. So in looking back at the previous cycles of the planetary alignments, that's when I realized that, yes, 2026 is a huge year of transition for us in the world. We did get a preview of this back in last year, 2025, and that was because the planets just dipped into the new signs before really settling in. So as an example, we have Saturn beginning its 2.5-year journey through Aries, which only happens once every 29 years. And again, Saturn dipped in 2025, and now it's really settling in this year. And the same with Neptune, but Neptune only enters Aries every 164 years. And so with these two planets in Aries, this has a signature to it, and we can look back at what was happening the last time to understand what we might expect. So for these two planets in Aries, and what's unique is that, and I'm glad we mentioned the degrees before, because I can say that Saturn and Neptune have started at 0 degrees. This is when they made their very rare conjunction. So beyond just being in the sign and journeying through that sign, they actually made a conjunction which is meeting in the exact same spot in the zodiac, and that was 0 degrees of Aries. This is the very starting point of the entire zodiac. 0 degrees Aries. And so that in itself speaks of a brand new cycle, a brand new beginning. But with this Saturn and Neptune conjunctions, we look back at history, because these are about dissolving entrenched systems, breaking down outdated paradigms, and rebuilding from scratch. And sometimes astrology can be really literal, which I love. We look back at the last time Saturn and Neptune made this conjunction. This time it was in Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign of structure itself. And this was when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989. And also when Saturn and Neptune made a conjunction in 1917 in Leo, the sign of royalty, we saw the Romanov dynasty fall. So I think this time in Aries, this does also bring, Saturn and Neptune can also bring medical breakthroughs and health crises. So in Aries, Aries is the sign that rules the blood. I believe this could bring huge advancements in blood work. And I spoke about this a year ago. And since then, we have actually had some amazing revolutionary diagnostic blood work come through, particularly with blood cancer. So that's already come to pass. Saturn and Neptune can also indicate vulnerable mental health. So I do believe that we'll see some breakthroughs in psychedelic-assisted therapies, particularly to do with depression and addiction. These two planets also do have that signature related to addiction and depression. And in Aries is ruled by Mars. Again, we have this literal astrology, and I have predicted the scientific discoveries and missions to Mars, and this is all happening and all in the works as well for our future. And I think this could bring some really exciting information back to Earth, these Mars discoveries. Also, Aries rules the face. So revolutionary new facial techniques, and we're already seeing these facelifts that celebrities are coming out with, quite extraordinary. But we do need to be very mindful of the facial recognition here. Again, with this undermining energy, this could be dangerous for identity theft, for example. And that is just one of the huge planetary transits that is contributing to the world's radical transformation. I could go into Uranus in Gemini, Chiron's entry into Taurus. The Leo Aquarius eclipses start this year, beginning a 18-month new karmic cycle. And the last time we had these Leo Aquarius eclipses was back in 2017 through to 2019. This was the time that Donald Trump was elected to office. And Trump is actually, he has a Leo rising. So this makes him particularly sensitive to these eclipses and this cycle. But with Leo and Aquarius, this is about leadership and the people. And this can bring conflict as we are already seeing. In fact, even when Trump was first elected to office, there was a huge uprising. We saw the mass women's march, and also around that time they had the yellow vest protests against Macron at the same time. So we will see an uprising with the people against the leaders, demanding accountability during these Leo Aquarius eclipses, which will last through until 2027.
And so I guess Orban losing his election in Hungary is a part of that.
I would say so. I mean, and this astrology is not just about global politics. This astrology also affects us personally. This is about our own leadership. This can be within our community. It can be within our family. It can be within ourselves, stepping up into that leadership role. So we see that reflection throughout.
Let's talk a little bit about AI, but maybe take a different angle to it. I myself am 7 days a week, reading, watching, listening to researchers, to engineers, and it's not because I want to learn a particular skill or complete some task. For me personally, and it just feels as if it's something that is so transformational that I want to understand it so that as things start to develop, I'm not, in essence, afraid and pushing it away because I fear that I won't be able to operate in a world driven by AI. Yeah. Part of what I have been sort of studying on my own is trying to understand just the answer of like, well, what is AI, right? And when you dive in and you listen to these incredibly smart people, it's fascinating to me because it brings to me questions around people, our belief systems, or the things that we in essence trust or want to trust because it gives us comfort, answers, sort of, it runs the gamut. But what I think is interesting is I think there's going to be, a reckoning is too strong of a word, but I think that there will be some level of a reflection where we have to deal with it individually or within ourselves, because when you look at how AI has been constructed, it's not as if it was sort of this traditional sort of coding or, if this, then this, and we're in essence writing lines of code. It's sort of like dropping everything in and watching what happens when you put all this information together. And it's fascinating to see how, in essence, it's like these neural connections. And I just happen to think that people who are that look to the stars, to astrology, those people that are highly spiritual and religious in their own right, it's going to make a lot of people think about what it means to be human. And they may then be asking different and maybe even more refined questions of what it means to be here on Earth. And I'm just curious as to your perspective on it. When we see just and even the conversation, just what is happening with AI it's fascinating. And I think it was cute for a while, but if you dive into it, it truly is like another being to some degree right here on Earth. And I'm just fascinated based on your perspective.
It really is the era. When I was talking about a new era that we are stepping into now, it really is the era of AI. I think we will look back at this period and realize that later on, and that there was life before AI, and then there's life after AI. And I attribute this astrologically to two transits, actually. Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini plays into this as well. So Pluto has entered Aquarius. It's spending its first full year in Aquarius. The last time it did that was back in the late 1700s. This was the time of the American and French revolutions and the early industrial revolution as well. And Pluto will now journey through in Aquarius until 2044. So over this period, this is where AI is really exponentially developing and changing our lives from the ground up. There's no going back. This is inevitable. This is not
the genie's out of the bottle.
The genie's out of the bottle. This is not something we can manipulate. And I think the central question here is whether we use this new technology as a tool or we allow it to become a force that we hand our power over to. Pluto rules power in astrology. It
Is
also
there any sign that you, I mean, sorry to cut you off, but do you get so curious where you almost want to peek around the corner of the charts to kind of, because what's fascinating about AI is that depending upon who you listen to or watch or read, everyone sort of has a different time of predicting AGI and superintelligence and these sorts of things. And you've got some people that think, oh, they're not telling us the exact truth. It's happening much faster. And then the others that are sort of holding it at bay saying, oh, we have time. I would, maybe somewhere in the middle. But
Yeah.
I just wonder if, do you ever feel tempted to sort of go down that rabbit hole astrologically, just to understand, because I think people are contemplating, what's going to happen. To your point, like there is a start point, like life before and life after. Mm-hmm. And you, in sort of the most sort of stressful times for people, they think about universal based income, how will people, what's going to happen to schools, all these sorts of things. So there's that panic meter that is probably low right now. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, I friends and people that I know here that have already started losing their jobs, and they're seeing that it's not coming back, right? There's this demarcation that role is forever gone. And so I'm just curious if you're tempted to, or how do you think about how to read where that might be? It's not that you're in the prediction markets at all. Yeah. It's just more about, I just would be so tempted, I guess is what I'm admitting.
Well, yes. In terms of when it's going to happen, we are here. We have arrived, but we're still in its infancy astrologically, because Pluto has only just really, it's been dipping its toes in since 2023. 2023. And so we've been getting these snippets, and in that sense, it's been giving us a little warning sign. Sounds very negative, but in a way, it's probably an apt word. Little warning signs, little indications of this is coming, prepare. And I think preparation is key, rather than rejecting, rather than thinking this is going to just dissipate. But it will be an exponential increase in AI basically infiltrating our everyday existence. And that will be when we arrive at 2044, which is when Pluto will move out of Aquarius. That is really when everything is going to be built, and we're going to have a full understanding of what this actually looks like. But until then, from right now, we are exponentially moving into that era of AI. And it is absolutely infiltrating. I think Pluto also, in as much as this can be extremely helpful, obviously it's going to change the way that we work. It's going to change the way that we live. It's going to change the way that we relate even to other humans, because we're talking about robotic companionship also, I believe.
Yeah.
So life is going to be very, very different. But I think also that Uranus in Gemini is really bringing in those robotics. So this is where that companionship and that human touch, we need to be mindful of not losing that, and not losing our compassion, especially, and we're not even talking about the planetary transits here, we're talking about the astrological ages. So I believe that we've stepped into the age of Aquarius already. So this aligns with Pluto being in a
great song with that name,
isn't it? Great show, that hair. Yes.
So you think we've entered the age of Aquarius?
I absolutely do. I do. Yes.
And what does that get for people? What does that mean, loosely, broadly speaking?
Okay. So the age of Aquarius, these ages, they last for about 2,500 years. And so we are talking about a huge epoch in time. And it really has Aquarian themes that we can attribute to that epoch in time. Aquarius is the sign of technology. It's also the sign of, it's probably the most intelligent sign. It's an air sign. So this is where, intelligence, technology, artificial intelligence is really a literal manifestation of those themes, those Aquarian themes. We've exited because of the Earth's wobble on its axis. The ages actually go backwards. So we've just exited the age of Pisces. This was the age of religion. Pisces rules religion. It rules spirituality. And that comes with a deep sense of compassion and humanity. That said, Aquarius is also about humanity. It's a kind sign, so there is hope for us, but we must not get lost in the cool intelligence and logic and technology that this epoch of time offers us, and still keep a little bit of that age of Pisces with us.
See, and what's so fascinating about that is that I've found myself just in my own head sort of thinking, it's like my late father grew up, sadly, his childhood was living through World War II in Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he had thoughts of why this lifetime, or what did I do wrong, right? And then a lot of people think those sorts of things if they're living through something catastrophic. And I try to step back and think, how incredible is it that we are alive right now in this transition period, right? Because if it's 2,500 years on average, then there are plenty of people that will be on this planet that it will be it'll be common knowledge. It'll be the way life is, as opposed to those of us now that are sort of the day laborers converting from one age to the next. It just feels very big. I don't know if I don't mean it from it's weighty, it's too much weight. I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when we look at the cycles as well of the outer moving planets, and they move so slowly, so they really can describe an entire generation. I believe, this has not really got to do with astrology, but it's more to do with spirituality, my spirituality. I believe that we choose to incarnate in a certain time period, and we do that for our own reasons to do with soul growth and evolution.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now that's heavy. That's big. I'm going to sit with that later this evening. Well, Natasha, I could speak with you about you're just so wonderful and engaging and open with what you know in a way that does not feel, someone like me walks in, I'm already in a down position because I don't have the expertise. I don't speak the same language that you do with regards to astrology, and yet I am absolutely fascinated. I think it's incredibly powerful, and I've had too many experiences in my life where I'd look up at the stars and think, I am on this continent, and yet my kids are in another continent looking up at the very same stars, right? And I just think that's so powerful, and I love that as above is below. That is going to stick with me, and I love and thank you for this astrological weather, because that was something that was a bridge for me to help understand that sort of the role we have in sort of free will and choice and the timing of everything in ways that I think we're going to be exploring and asking some big questions in our own personal way and on our own time schedule, right? So you are just a treat and just a wonderful person and someone that I think very dearly of. And people are very lucky that you are okay with them coming up to you at parties and saying, could you please help me out? We want to thank Natasha Weber, or Astrotash, as she is lovingly known. You can go to astrotash.com. I'm also going to have links on a birth chart service that you can access and get connected to with Natasha. But if you haven't and you do, you will find that she is just a wonderful person and human being, and will really help walk you through what your specific chart is in that regard. You can pick up her book, Your Celestial Compass, by Penguin Random House. Thank you, my friend, for spending some time. I know it's early there. The power of technology, the age that we're in, we're able to have a conversation where it's early evening here in Nashville and you're in Australia and your day is just beginning.
Absolutely. And, with Aquarius being the sign of humanity, isn't it beautiful that the technology that Aquarius also represents allows us to connect? So thank you so much, Rod. And thank you for all of the amazing storytelling that you do out in the world, that is truly bringing an awareness of, that you have that microphone and you use that so well. So I really appreciate the platform today. It allows me to bring the deeper study of astrology to the people, hopefully in a language that can be understood. I think that is really my calling, to bridge that gap, between the popular sun sign astrology that most of us know about in terms of our horoscope and our star sign, and connect it back with this deeper ancient wisdom which astrology is really based in. So thank you for allowing me to do that.
You are welcome. Thank you. As above is below. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger. You've been listening to The Narrative Edge. You can get your copy of the book wherever books are sold. And remember that The Narrative Edge takes you around the world of storytelling, returning you to your story and the moments that define a life in motion. I want to thank my friends at Rick Productions and encourage you to check them out if you're looking to broadcast your ideas. Until next time, my friends, and remember that if you're not in control of your story, well, who is?